So let's get started with our speaker today. That would be Jim Hunt. And Jim is a former district governor, so he knows Mike Becker real well. So this is where Jim is right now. He's down in this little cabin that he says, way out in the boonies. So I'll scroll out. He's up in northern Minnesota. And there's nothing but trees and water.
Yes, the county has 1,000 lakes.
God. Wow.
And which county is it?
Itasca County.
Okay.
We're north of Grand Rapids, about 25 miles. Marcel is the area.
It looks
And
beautiful.
back
It is.
due north here. The town is Marcel. And I'll just bring her out. Oh boy.
That is so interesting what we can do with
Boy,
technology.
it is fascinating.
That is.
Yeah. So here's our
Looks
little
like
town Superior over here.
Is that, looks like there's some ice in that one lake over to the right there, Lutsen.
I don't know when this was shot, but I didn't do it this morning. But
Yeah, and it hasn't greened out quite like that yet either.
I don't imagine. But yeah,
That was nice.
interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, so turn it over to Mr. Jim and take it away.
All right, I'll share my screen here and get started. Let's go to presentation mode. Okay, I'm going to talk about Fast for Hope today, our project going on in Nicaragua, and kind of give you an update with it. So things are moving on it. Talk about what is Fast for Hope. What we've learned is what I'll spend the primary time on it, and then what we're doing moving forward. So, excuse me. What is Fast for Hope? It's a district-wide program, and it's the only district-wide program that we have. It is unique to our district. We've not found other districts doing it. It allows us to do things without relying on foundation dollars. We did one grant about 3 years ago for some very specific projects, but it really depends upon the voluntary donations from Rotarians around the district. The benefits of doing it this way is it allows us to do a long-term commitment, which is we're trying to change culture in Nicaragua and the village we're working with. It really is a generational thing, we're finding out. This allows us to take some risks. It allows us to make mistakes, you know, and we've kind of gone a couple steps forward, a couple steps back occasionally. One of the first communities we worked with in Nicaragua, you know, talked with them, we thought it was going to be a good community. We basically took one of our women over on the side after the meeting and said, why don't you just give us the money, tell us what you want us to do, and go home. And really, it took us a while to find a village that was willing to work with us. We're willing to work with them, not just tell them what they need to do. So it's been an interesting journey and interesting learnings and moving forward on it. This is RI's new vision statement, came out last year, and I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it or to think about it, but when we saw it, it really was a lot of what we were trying to do with Fast for Home. Increase our impact, expand our reach, increase our ability to adapt. And so what we're doing in Nicaragua is being watched by Rotary as a possible model moving forward. As I'll talk about Opportunity International, what they're doing in Nicaragua is a possible model moving forward. So, where did this all start? I mean, Fast for Hope has been around for better than 20 years. Originally, it started with trying to do water wells in Haiti. After the second dry well, we figured out that there were things that need to be done better. But what really got the emphasis going was, I believe it was the 2006 International Convention that Jeffrey Sachs spoke at after writing the book End of Poverty. And he was the keynote speaker and basically said, you know, we're the first generation that has the wherewithal to eliminate poverty in the world if we really want to do that. So that got some of the Rotarian leaders in our district thinking about what needs to be done. So there are several of reference books there. They're on the district website if you want to look them up later, but Toxic Charity by Bob Lupton is a real interesting one. I got to do a workshop with Bob. He's somebody that's really lived this process of trying to change a community. He moved his family into inner city Atlanta. And now after last year was their 40th anniversary, in 40 years they've managed to go from one neighborhood to 5 neighborhoods. His estimate is it takes 10 years to really make an impact on a community. The other one I'm going to reference to you is Poverty Incorporated, the documentary. If you have Amazon Prime, it's worth watching. It really talks about Haiti and talks about the challenges of giving aid. And one of the things I take out of that book was the fact that before the earthquake in Haiti, it wasn't a net exporter of rice. But when the earthquake happened and all this free aid came in, what came in but rice. When you think about what that did to the local farmers, is suddenly they can't sell their crop. This is their only cash crop. It really makes a devastating impact on it. What we found with aid over the period of time is that aid is really, it's good for natural disasters, immediate humanitarian relief, but it needs to change over to long-term sustainability if you really want to make a difference. And that's one of the things that we've had trouble in the Western world about giving aid. Students tend to stay in the mode of, we're there to solve a problem, an immediate problem, but reality is it changes and you need to look at the whole thing. So there's some ideas for you. I'll talk about, this is our classroom for learning in El Corozo in Nicaragua. Why did we pick Nicaragua? Well, primarily it's in the same time zone. It's fairly easy to get to. It's only a 3-hour flight from either Miami or Houston to get there. And it is the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere after Haiti. They managed to make their way up the poverty standards a little bit, but have fallen back recently. But it was, up until a couple of years ago, one of the safest countries in Nicaragua. And I still think, from the perspective of safety, it's still a very safe country, as long as you don't get involved in the political side of things. Political things has become, Daniel Ortega was elected president and now managed to make himself dictatorship. His wife is now the vice president. The two of them are kind of running the country. Using the COVID-19 as an example, they basically said it doesn't exist in Nicaragua. They've only had 9 cases and 1 person has died. The head of the National Institute of Health came out and kind of contradicted that, and she got fired the next day. So really saying it doesn't happen here, but I have to find it out other ways. But this is kind of probably the key slide of the whole presentation. What have we learned? And I think I talked about the fact that relief that really needs to move from relief to development or change. And it's really, what are you doing with the community? What are you doing with the people, not for the people? And the one that I see the more critical is the community needs to be the first investor. With whatever project that you're trying to do with a community, and this is true in Nicaragua, it's true I think in other projects around the world, and then in our own communities. If the community is willing to be the first investor, the likelihood of your success goes up dramatically. Particularly, like we're working with El Corozo, as a poor rural village in Nicaragua. If they're willing to put their own money in on a project, which they did on a couple of the projects we're working on, your likelihood of success goes up dramatically. Kind of the counterpart to that one is one of the stories from Nicaragua is a German NGO came in, a non-government organization, to provide water for a village. And they did what I consider appropriate technology. They had a bicycle pump, and you'd sit on the bicycle and pump the pedals, and that would pump water, which works very well. Well, the problem was the chain broke on the bicycle about 6 months after the German group put it in. They came back the next year. They said, "Oh, why didn't you fix the bicycle?" And they went, "Well, it's not our bicycle. It's yours. You're the ones that decided it needed it. We didn't need to want it." So it's really that thing about, working with people rather than for people. So and the other thing is moving at the pace of the community, particularly with a rural community. If they have to be part of they have to harvest their crops, they have to do those kind of things. They don't have time to necessarily meet in a meeting and talk about what are the goals and ideas. So you have to work with that. So those are some of the things we've learned and been very important about the whole thing. So what have we accomplished in Nicaragua, in El Corozo? Some of you have had the chance over the years to meet the people from Kairos and Elena, and some of the others have been up to district conferences. So we've worked with it, and one of the things these are the things that we've really worked well with. The children's program, they're getting up to 30 kids every week. They meet right after school, have a snack for the kids, do reading, do learning games, and that's been very, it was slow starting, but it's really developed over time. A lot of activities around women's group advocacy, women's health issues. I think the shining star in all this is the healthcare initiative. The picture that's kind of in the center that looks like a box, the woman in front of the window with the box, that's actually a pharmacy kit. And we used a district grant to get 2 of those for the community. The community was willing to put together 4 or 5 people that were going for training for 3 weeks in order to how to use it, how to deal with it, how to do the bookkeeping part of it. This one is really taking off. They're just over-the-counter drugs that can be purchased in Nicaragua. The choice for the community members is they can get them at the local, they can walk down the street to the local, where the local kid is at, basically for about 40 cents on the dollar of what it costs them to do if they had to go to the nearest village. They can buy the products they need. They're using this as a little bit of economic development to the extent that they charge a little bit of an upcharge on drugs so that they can expand what they have. And they've actually been moving forward. They're now doing blood pressure screening, and they want to get into diabetes testing. We've got scheduled for one of the women to do another week of training, so she's certified in doing that. So that's, like I say, it's, from the community's perspective, they see it as a real asset. And then the reading program, part of the children's program, but that's what I would almost call a bookmobile activity. It's really a basket of books that comes. But it really is a time once a week where the kids sit down, they read the books to the kids. You have to understand from El Corozo's perspective, many of those families don't have books in their home. We're with a group, about 10, 19 kids. We asked the question, how many of you have books at home? Only 2 of the kids were able to raise their hands. And those 2 happen to be their parents or teachers. So that's the only reason. So you have to kind of teach how do you handle a book, how do you wash your hands, you keep them clean, you don't tear the pages. But once you've gone through that and get them called, I won't certified, it's too strong a word, but basically they get a library card out of it and then they can start checking books out and take them home. So that's been very active with it. The community project, the other projects on the bottom side of it is water. Is one of the projects they really said that they wanted to move forward on. For me, it's water's close to my heart. I like water projects. So for me, they put that kind of on the bottom of their priority list because they said, well, we can go walk the 3 miles to get the water and take an hour to 2 hours to get back. But we don't mind doing that. And I think that part of it is the socialization aspect of it. It allows the community as they walk over to get the water to interact with each other as they're doing it. So for them to put a new piping in was not a high priority issue. They have a community center that's a new interest for them. They want to build a library, a pharmacy in there. They want to do some things. So it's really interesting to see them bringing forth the idea of it. Then the road, if you've been around for a while, you've heard us talk about the road. They are in an area that in the wintertime, the road washes out with the rainy season. And so it needs work, and it ends up being too muddy to get in and out of the village. We made progress over the time, to the extent that originally, I think they thought the Rotarians coming in were going to be the white knights and we were going to build the road. And I think we finally get them to understand that no, we're there to help you in the process. It really has to be a local project that you do with your mayors or with your civic government. Part of the issue is the fact that the road goes through two political subdivisions with two mayors. And so we've worked with before, we've met with the mayors a couple of times, but now with the political unrest and another election, new mayors in, so new meetings are now planned to rethink the scope of it. Originally the road, as they proposed it, was a wide 20-meter road with shoulders and all the rest of it. And I kind of went, well, that's really beyond the scope of what they need. They don't need something that fancy. So that's all part of the process that's going on. But at least one of the new mayors, the steering team was down in March, met with one of the mayors. They're more interested in kind of bringing this whole process back up again. And if you think about a road, what would it take to put a road in Rochester? You're talking probably a minimum of 5 years from the time the concept is first floated to the fact that you actually get something done. So it's the same way in the rest of the world. It takes time. You've got to figure out how to do it. You've got to figure out how to pay for it. Some of those issues. Kairos, this is the steering committee with some of the Kairos members. We've relied on Kairos primarily over the history, working with El Corozo. They're very good at building up the capacity of the community, capacity of the individuals. We actually have one of the women in this photograph that's in the red in the back row, Adelia. Through all this process has become a city council member. So we've got her on the side of helping get the road moving forward and stuff. But it's something I don't think they ever would have thought of doing if it wasn't for the development that's happened this far. One of the problems we've had is the community leadership kind of going forward, going up and down and in spurts a little bit. You need the leadership of in the community to keep moving forward. It has changed over time, but now we've got some of the original people back, plus some new blood in it, and it's moving forward again. The other thing from our perspective is that, we've done well with the community in developing relationships, developing success of the community. What we really haven't done is focused on the economics. That's kind of what we're trying to do, and that's kind of the next step in this whole process. So what we want to do moving forward is we're starting to work with Opportunity International. Opportunity International is actually a group that I think is actually based in the Twin Cities area, but they're in 23 countries around the world. Primarily what they have done is microfinancing. They've done that very well, but they've discovered that that helps one family to get out of poverty, but it really doesn't help a community. So they're trying to figure out how to do that differently. So they've taken forward in Nicaragua a different model to move to try to eliminate poverty, really focus on the economics part of it. So what they've done is they've yucca plants, and I don't know if you're familiar with yucca, but it's a root plant. It's really just a starch that's developed out of the root, but it's the staple crop in Nicaragua. And so they've worked with the farmers they've brought in some agricultural expertise to it. And it's interesting. Farmers to me are either the most conservative or the most risk takers I've ever seen. You think about, are you willing to plant a crop this year because all your livelihood depends upon it? It takes some real, forethought to do that. One of the examples of the yucca plant is they take about a 6-inch stalk off the flower. That's where you start the next plant, and you stick one end of it in the ground. That's where the tuber grows from as it develops over the year. What's interesting is their traditional way of doing it was planting it in at about a 45-degree angle. The tuber would grow at the bottom. What was discovered by the agricultural experts was that if you put the whole thing flat in the ground, you can get a tuber off both ends. You can basically double your production. Again, this is one of the things that you try to get a farmer to convince them to do it differently. It's difficult to do, but slowly over time they've been doing it. Farmers are starting to realize the benefits of it. I think one of the farmers we talked to, he said that he realized it. He told his neighbors about it. They didn't believe it, but when he started hiring them to help him harvest the crop, then they realized that it's really producing more. It's sufficient to be worthwhile. So what did Opportunity International do was they put in a yucca processing plant. What's interesting about yucca is that it grows for 4 or 5 months and then reaches maturity. Once it reaches maturity in the harvestable stage, you can harvest it anytime in the next 6 months. You can just leave it in the ground. It won't rot, won't deteriorate. The downside of it is once you pull it out of the ground, you only have about 48 hours to process it. So traditionally they would get about 5% of the product would be grade A consumption for human usage. About 60% of it would be grade B for starch, and the bottom 30% of it was just animal feed. Because of this 48-hour time, well, what Opportunity International has been able to do is they can schedule with the farmer that they'll say, Jose on Monday gets to do his crop, and Thursday will do, somebody else's crop. So they can schedule it out, get the crops in, get it processed. So it's allowed the grade A consumption to go up to about 20%. It's allowed the grade C stuff to go from about 30% down to 5%. Plus, they've got a guaranteed market for their crop. Cargill has come in and said, we'll buy everything you produce that the plant will produce. So it's really moving forward on it. So that was the agricultural side of it. They did a high school. They call it a technical school because the kids graduate with both a high school degree and a certificate in either agriculture or hospitality. It's one of the 2 specialties they can do. And so there's a big farm at the school that sells the produce that they make. They sell the water. And then you can see at the bottom of this Bakea Lodge where some investors from the Atlanta area put this resort in. And then all the kids that go through the high school that do the hospitality track actually intern at the lodge, work through all the jobs of the lodge so that they understand fully what they're getting involved with. And then the lodge buys a lot of the produce from the farm. So it's kind of a sustainable thing. That's kind of gone downhill a little bit with this whole political situation in Nicaragua, and now with the virus being impacted, the tourism of it has gone basically zero. So I'm not sure how well that's working at the moment. At least the agricultural part of it's moving forward. So what does the partnership between Ojai and Rotary look like? So what this kind of tries to activate the fact that Ojai has looked at about 40 communities. They do an assessment. What can they do? What can they work with? Where can they work with the communities? There are, I believe, 28 communities that they're working with right now. But they have a whole other series of about 12 communities. They don't have the resources to go after to really make them move forward with it. So that's where Rotary starts to show up, because we can be the ones that can be the extra bodies to work with the other communities. So that's where our partnership is going to move forward with a trial between the 2 organizations. We'll take one of the communities that they have singled out, and then we'll see what support we can offer, see how they fit into that model, and see if they're really developed well. So that we've just started that process. And the relationship between Rotary and Ojai has been, probably 4 years in the making. We've been working around with figuring out what they do, what we do, where our strengths are, what we can do to support each other. And from Ojai's perspective, they really look at Rotary as being the way that they can get to more people in this whole thing, because they're limited in their resources and the number of people that they have. So we did send a delegation down. The steering committee went down, visited the couple of communities, did various things, but really to work that process out. And I think that we'll decide on which community we're really going to work with, and we'll move forward with that. I know it's down at the bottom, we met with the Nicaragua mayor, again, around the road project, but also around the Minister of Water because of the water well issue in the village. So those things are moving forward. We've got a new leadership team, 4 new members on the El Corozo leadership team. So I see all things moving positive, moving forward with it. So the future of the partnership, that's to be developed. Right now it's a pilot for both Fast for Hope and for Opportunity International. We'll see how this works. Like I say, Ojai would like us to be successful. We would like to be successful. I think we can be, and we can use this model to expand further as we move forward on it. So the reality is that I think we can make a difference in poverty. We can improve people's lives, and we can change the world. This is the way we're moving forward with it. So how can you get involved? Contribute. We asked a contribution of $10 Rotarian. We're hoping that your club will decide how many members you have and contribute the whole amount. We'll start again with going with cultural delegations. We talked about doing one in the fall. It depends upon how the rest of this environment develops, but at least 30% of the Rotarians in the district have expressed a desire to do so. Like I say, it is a safe place, as long as you don't bring up the political issues, and we've been careful to do that, to stay away from that, and everything seems to be fine. Just to make one comment about the political situation there is that with the dictatorship the way it is under Ortega, it's now illegal to wave the Nicaraguan flag. So, because that started to be a rallying point for the people against the government. So think about that, what would happen if the government decided waving the US flag was against the law. And so you start to see the sense of divisiveness that's gone on there. Like I say, as long as you can stay away from politics, things seem to be moving forward pretty well. So at this point, I'll stop with the talking part of it and open it up for questions. So Doug, you want to go ahead and unmute folks, and I'll stop sharing and go from there.
Okay, you aware of the project, that the district project we're working on in 5964 sanitary water, installing a monitoring system for remote monitoring on the chlorine systems that are in a lot of different villages in both Nicaragua and Honduras.
Yes, I'm aware of them, both from the perspective of the St. Paul Club that's put the chlorinators in, and then project that you had going about the monitoring of it. Yes, I'm aware of it.
Okay, good. I asked that question so that, since you were moving forward with water projects, you would be able to get one of these monitoring systems.
Yes, I understand that. It's kind of a sidelight from what I do. I'm also on the district grant subcommittee, so I kind of a mentor for grants, and so yes, I'm familiar with it.
Okay, great, thanks. Well, because we've already sent half the money down through and I take it you're familiar with EOS International then?
Yes.
Okay.
I love the direction that Fast for Hope is taking with the community development, the economic. That's wonderful. That's really
I agree. I agree with you. It's kind of something we've talked about for a long time. How do we move that forward? This seems to be our path forward. So yes.
And I also like the fact that you have made mistakes along the way that you've learned from. I think it's making the program a lot stronger so that it can be replicated in another area eventually. Yeah, so congratulations to Fast for Hope.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it has been a learning experience for us. And I think primarily we come in the ideal that you can solve a problem and do it in a short period of time, a year, and get out of there. That's not the reality if you want to do long-term commitment, long-term development with the community. So we're learning.
And just one other question though, as far as the leadership within the community, is there someone there that's, because you all leave, and so how is the communication between Rotary and the community since we're so far apart?
Well, we had traditionally, it's been through Kairos in the school in Nicaragua that's been our contact point, but we've actually had a couple of Zoom calls. We had a Skype call with the community, and they found that real interesting to finally be able to see us again, because they want to see us show up and be supportive, wondering when we're going to come back. And so there's a little bit of issue around bandwidth and the internet connectivity with El Corozo. They had to go to a coffee house in the next community, but we were able to do that, and that worked pretty well. And I think that we'll continue that going forward, figure out how to do it.
Yeah, good.
It's hard to find an organization like international one with which you're now working. How long did it take you to find them, and how firm is that commitment? Maybe I should ask it that way.
Well, it took us several years. I know I've been working with them for 4 years from the first time I met with the marketing director and their CEO, and it's taken us a while to get it going for it. They presented to us a couple of years ago. Their CEO invited us to a whole meeting and the Rotarians and the things we can do. So we're still working this process going forward. Like I say, that they look at Rotary as being an opportunity to expand what they're doing. We look at it as an opportunity to expand what we're doing. And I think synergistically we can work together and move forward. So,
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Jim, how long has Ortega been in control down there? It seems like forever. And do you know how old he is?
I don't know how old he is. He was leading the army in the 80s when they overthrew the dictatorship. It wasn't until 2005 that he got elected president. And so he was, Nicaragua Constitution said that you could only serve one term. So about 2008, he was, starting to think about what he was going to do again. And they ended up having an all-night session of the Supreme Court where some of the people left, but the court hadn't officially closed the session. He came in and made the argument that term limits on the president were illegal because they were way below what the power to everybody statements on in the Constitution. The Supreme Court that was left agreed with him. So throughout the 5-year ban, so since then, that was 2008, he's been there for another 12 years. So he's been in power for 15 years.
And he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Doesn't look like it. Well, I thank you all for your time, and any further questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Doug and let him close the meeting.
Well, thank you for your presentation.
Well,
Anything else for today?
What were those 2 questions you asked, those think about things? So, because I want to leave and think about them. You started off the meeting talking about what Rotarians do.
I'll have to play the recording back. I don't remember.
They were good thought questions
Yeah.
about Rotarians stepping up to the challenge of.
Yeah, something that we could be doing, should be doing, because all the opportunities have changed now. We're in a different world, I guess.
We really are going to have to think about how we're going to adapt to the new normal.
Yeah.
What can we rally around?
We haven't even gotten to the new normal yet.